Paul just come up with some weird stuff a lot, and this one struck me as weird. Let's get into it.
Hey, Tom Rabbit! I hope you got this for your recording. Hey, YouTube out there. Tom Rabbit likes to record these. Hey, Tom Rabbit!
Okay, so like I've been a Christian all my life, but like as I was reading like a lot of the Old Testament, specifically like the conquest of the Israelites, I was like, how is it like just for God to command like genocide, especially like against the Amalekites, where he says like, leave no man, woman, child, or infant alive, slaughter all that breathes. I just like had like because I heard like you were like 40 years Christian, so like I thought I'd maybe get like a better understanding of it.
Well, first of all, to call it genocide is a completely inaccurate. That word describes the eliminating of people only because of their politics, their nationality, their ethnicity, or their culture. The Bible is very clear that God commanded them to wipe them out because of their extreme evil.
Yeah, their culture. Right.
Mm-hmm. So is Amalekite not like, is that considered the city, or because the city's, I'm confused. So
the Amalekites was a group of people that the Old Testament points out were extremely evil for centuries. Okay.
Right. So I understand.
Let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
You say you're a Christian?
Yeah.
Is it God's prerogative to give the sentence of death upon everybody?
Yes. The wages of sin is death.
Okay, good. So God told the Jews to give the Amalekites an early departure for his own sufficient reasons. And I suspect the reason is because they had incurred sexually transmitted diseases and genetic anomalies due to their sexual perversions that God did not want to spread to the rest of humanity.
So you're saying they were like okay.
Yeah, he's dumbfounded. Here's the second instance of Darth already playing word games. He's now using the phrase early departure. But yeah, let's listen to it. Let's listen to that one more time.
Perversions like diseases and sexually transmitted diseases and genetic anomalies due to their sexual perversions that God did not want to spread to the rest of humanity.
Right. Okay. Well, he's describing what is like a mass herpes outbreak, and because of it, they don't want it to spread, so they all need to be unalived. If only we knew somebody who could heal people. If only, huh?
So you're saying they were like okay. I actually do understand that. Thank you for that.
So is it? Listen carefully, right? We have clear historical information as to the sexual perversions of a number of these nations.
Right.
The Bible talks about it, including child sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
So if they were engaging in, and this is why God's laws were so strident or stringent.
Now, notice here how he's using the word child sacrifice, right? Well, we'll get to that later. Just keep that in mind. He describes this as child sacrifice.
At least from a modern perspective, about sexual. Because God was wiser than people, knowing that if you don't have physical relations under certain constraints, then what will happen is sexually transmitted diseases and genetic anomalies will creep into the population and then spread over time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And so one among other reasons that God wiped out the people in the flood was because of their sexual behavior. Okay? Not just violence, right?
Right.
And so when people's behavior is so bad that they receive and spread sexually transmitted diseases, this is going to spread wider and wider unless you put a stop to it.
And there's only one way to do that, guys. Elimination.
So in a similar matter that God wiped out everybody on earth because of their bad behavior, including evil, violence, and their sexual practices, God did the same thing to the Amalekites. So we don't even have to know the reasons. The Bible's very clear that God has his own sufficient reasons for what he commands, even though it might be bewildering to us. We're not in a position to second guess the wisdom, the justice, or the righteousness of God's command, even though those commands may seem to us to be, if you don't have a wide enough perspective, then you can easily come to a wrong conclusion, and that includes God's command to wipe out the Amalekites. Mm-hmm. God does not have to go into specificity as to why he wipes them out. He gave a general explanation because of their evil.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
It was just like, I feel like the thing for me is like the whole like slaughter the infants thing, which is like what I was struggling with. And I do understand like where you're coming from.
Okay, the whole, do those infants have the sentence of death upon them?
Well, yeah, but they're infants.
Okay, well, now you're arguing. Now what you're now upset about is that God gave them a change of location.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now remember what I told you to remember, right? He's now using the phrase in the same for an unaliving or whatever you want to call it. He's using this phrase change of location, right? Because it's a way to diminish how bad it sounds, right?
Wait, can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, you don't think physical death is the cessation of the individual, do you? Whether it's 1 year old or 100 years old, they just change locations. Mm-hmm. Their body is their soul is separated from their body until the general resurrection.
So what he's trying to do here is tackle the criticism of the killing of the infants by saying, well, it wasn't really that. If you put it that way, it sounds bad, but what is it really? Well, it's just a change of location, right? That's all that happens. People don't really die. They're in the afterlife somewhere. And it's just a change of location. Here's the problem. Is that Darth is very inconsistent with and where he employs this phrasing. For example, when he's talking about cases of abortion, he's going to not use this because what he's trying to do is emphasize how messed up it is, right? So he won't say, oh, abortion is simply a change of location. He can't say something like that. So what does he do instead? He describes it extremely gruesomely, the act, this things happening to different body parts and stuff like that. So that's just very clearly inconsistent. Another example is like, well, what about Jesus on the cross, right? Now, Christians want to describe Jesus dying on the cross as something that was very, very of deep importance and significance, and it was an incredible self-sacrificial act, and it was pretty epic and everything. But now, what if we describe it the way Darth is saying, this is what actually happens. Jesus loved us so much that he changed location for us. Well, all of a sudden, it doesn't really sound like anything, but that's what Darth is trying to say dying is. So why does he use one phrasing one way and another phrasing another way? It's to try and just play word games and diminish one example and to sort of emphasize another one.
Okay.
So like, okay, yeah, I do get what you're saying. It took a second. I'm sorry.
If you don't listen to me, because we're not omniscient, we have to take God at his word, at his authoritative revelation, that he is perfect, that there is no injustice with God. So if there's something that we don't understand because of our limited perspective, then we defer to God's perfection, that God has his own sufficient reasons for carrying out things that we are baffled by.
Yeah, I mean, he even says this to atheists, right? And he'll say, atheist, you're in no position to be questioning God, atheist, right? Well, the fact that he is in fact God is to the atheist what the very thing in question is, right? If something or someone or a being or a person, whatever, was presenting themselves as God and we didn't question, right? Well, we could be fooled, right? And that's why we ask questions like, what does God need with the starship?
Yeah, I do agree what you're saying, but like at the same time, but I do like your explanation of the sexual immorality and the genetic disorders like spreading to the world.
I don't even need it. Hey, legal, come on up and explain why presuppositional apologetics is a waste of time. Okay, come on up. Okay, so the bottom.
It's funny how I just get so irritated looking in the chat and some, like, I mean, you can't. I mean, this is why Darth's lives have not grown. It's because he's just constantly blocking and kicking people. I mean, just he could have been, you know, hundreds, maybe even 1,000 plus viewers by now, but he's just so concerned with like just nonsense in the chat or something. Somebody said something about him, he's got to address it, kick him out.
Bottom line is this: is God has revealed that he exists and he is perfect. Therefore, we are not in a position to question what God allows, even though we might be bewildered by it.
Okay, so if God wiped them out, and the same with the flood, if he wiped them out due to sexual immorality, don't you feel like today in the world, being that we have an increased population, we'd have more sexual immorality? Why did God wipe them out, but wipe people out today? Because I feel like, and especially like with children, I feel like it's just like so much more widespread and more common now, just population-wise. You know, I mean, 3,000 years ago compared to now, our population has been billions and billions more. Don't we have more sexual immorality and more sin in general? So if God commands them to early death due to their sexual immorality, why wouldn't he do the same thing today?
Well, first of all,
because I feel like STDs and like sexual diseases.
I will explain to you that within populations today, we have pockets of people that are immoral. But when it came to the Amalekites, the evil was pervasive throughout all of them, not just pockets.
Even the newborns, everyone.
And so this posed
incorrigibly so, right?
A threat to other nations. Okay.
Right. So I understand.
This guy asked kind of an interesting question, though. I usually ask a similar question. The way I run it is like all these Christians that want to like run around and say that we're in the end time as well. Usually what they mean by that is that the end times is like sort of the climax. This is like, it's basically the worst that it's ever been. And this is why it's the end times and Jesus is going to come, right? The problem is that if this is the worst that it's going to be, right, then why were all these very, these actions like the flood and, these very widespread exterminations or whatever, why was that done in a time where it wasn't the worst? It seemed like it would make sense to where that's done in the worst of times. Right. But here we are, the world is as evil as it's ever going to be and no flood.
Sam, that it was like composed within just their group.
How about this? How about that God knew that if the Amalekites were not eliminated with their sexually transmitted diseases or genetic defects, probably from inbreeding, that some of those people would eventually start interbreeding with the Israelites, and these diseases or genetic anomalies would spread within the nation of Israel, which God purposed to preserve them from. So the point is this: you and I are not in a position to call into question the goodness or the correctness of God. See, this is the problem with people who challenge God. It's a form of insanity. you cannot call into question what God does, because if you do, on what grounds?
Okay, but like you can't feel like empathy for a newborn or a child that was slaughtered by the sword. Like I feel like.
Okay,
I feel like I know the
Sarah,
God.
listen to me. You're not realizing we're talking about two different issues.
Darth really has no answers for this, and he all he's really saying is don't ask God what he needs, why he needs a starship. That's it.
The ending of their life versus the means by which they die. Dying by the sword is relatively quick. Would it make you feel better? Is that if they had a slow death over a month? Would that make you feel better? Would it make you feel better? Would it make you feel better if he gave them all heart attacks?
It would.
Yeah, obviously, optimally would be no suffering at all. So even though a sword might be relatively quick when compared to dying over months, there would still be suffering involved, right? I think Darth has committed to the position there is no gratuitous suffering.
It would make me feel better if there was a less violent altercation.
Okay, so the issue is not the cessation of biological life and the transference of their soul to a different location. The issue is you don't like the fact that God has done it through the sword.
I don't like the fact that really he did it at all. I mean, as much as
You're not in a position to judge that.
But it's murder.
Don't ask questions. Don't look behind the curtain. Just be a good little Christian.
Okay, all right, listen. You tell me you're a Christian?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, can God commit murder?
I guess. I mean...
Okay, that is colossally stupid. So murder is either the unethical or the illegal taking of one's life. Which jurisdiction would God be under? Can you tell me that?
Do you think that...
Okay, that's the question one more time.
No, I swear.
Goodbye, you're done.
Give me 15 seconds. You're picking me.
You're dodging. Okay.
Wow.
See, this is what they do. When you confront them with questions that expose the bankruptcy of their position, they ignore the question and they keep on going yada, 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 yada. So now it's time for you to go. Okay?
Remember, guys, keep asking, what does God need with the starship?
And I suspect the reason is because they had incurred sexually transmitted diseases and genetic anomalies due to their sexual perversions that God did not want to spread to the rest of humanity.